or should I say the primary data. So how can I this mix manage, and what are the systems? How can I this
Yeah.
relationship can be established?
Let us go to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is called as mixed methods research. So there is a school of thought which is now developing, which we call as mixed methods. And what is mixed methods research? Mixed method research is a a school of thought where people have started to mix methods. That is, they have started to combine qualitative methods with quantitative method. And why do they do it? You can seek triangulation, complementarity, elaboration, asking a question through qualitative and then following it up with quantitative research, and even expansion of the range of inquiry. So let me just give you some examples of how mixed methods are done. Uh, there are Okay, let me just go to this matrix straight away. Now, if you see, mixed methods research is where you combine qualitative and quantitative research, and this matrix has two dimensions. One, it says concurrent and sequential on the x-axis, and equal and dominant stance. So that means both qualitative and quantitative happen at the same time. So you begin in your research, you begin collecting qualitative data, and also at the same time, concurrently, you begin collecting data, quantitative data on the phenomena. And the emphasis, that means which of the two is more important or dominant in your study. In this case, both of them are dominant, both of them are equally dominant or equally important, and therefore they are both of them are written in capital letters. So qualitative plus quantitative, that means plus means they are, it is happening concurrently, and both are in capital, so both of them are equally dominant or equally important in the study. So I can use this kind of study. This is specially done in triangulation studies. So while I am collecting data on using survey instrument, I am collecting data from respondents, but also at the same time, while I am collecting data, I am also interviewing those respondents and recording their interviews to understand how they are experiencing a particular phenomena or how they are addressing a particular challenge in the organization. So both of them are happening at the same time. My collection of data through instrument as well as interviewing people. And both of them are equally important. I'm going to analyze my qualitative data. I'm also going to analyze my quantitative data, and I'm going to use the results of the two to triangulate to actually come to the conclusion that come to a common conclusion using both quantitative and qualitative research. The second quadrant here is where it happens sequentially. So that means you do qualitative first, follow it up with quantitative. So you do interviews, you understand the phenomena through the interviews. Based on the understanding of the phenomena, you plan out your quantitative study. So qual happens first, quantitative happens later. The other one could be quantitative happens first, qualitative happens sequentially or after the quantitative. Where does this happen? You did a study, you collected quantitative data through your surveys, and then you analyzed that data. You found certain findings, you obtained certain findings. Now you want to understand qualitatively what these findings mean, right? What you want to interpret these findings. So what do? You go back to the respondents, interview them, and again analyze these interviews and sort of substantiate what was found in the quantitative study. So this is more from explanatory point of view. You want to explain what was found in the quantitative study, and both of them are equally dominant. That means both of them are equally important in your study. You want to analyze them with the same rigor. You want to spend the same time doing both the kinds of study. Whereas in the
Can
dominant
we say this as an interview come questionnaire method? Is it right? I'm
interview.
generally interview come questionnaire method.
Absolutely. So questionnaire is quantitative, interview is qualitative. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a mix of both these. So that becomes a mixed method design, mixed method study design. The third quadrant in this matrix is where you have uh, again it is concurrent. So you do qualitative and quantitative together, but you are very clear that your primary focus is qualitative work. You just collect some numbers quantitatively. You give some so for example, let's say you are doing some case study, right? You actually do a lot of interviews, but you also do some descriptives, numbers of the organization, give some more details through numbers. So now quantitative is a lesser dominant paradigm, lesser dominant aspect of your study. The major is the interviews and the qualitative part. Quantitative is used only to supplement some more information to the qualitative study. Similarly, on the other hand, quantitative is the dominant paradigm, right? And you also do some interviews at the same time, but they are like one or two or few interviews just to substantiate or just to sort of also complement what is being done. But qualitative is not as rigorous, qualitative is not as intense or as detailed as the quantitative part of the study is. Whereas in sequential, you do qualitative, that is the most dominant paradigm, dominant aspect of your study, and follow it up with some numbers just to sort of corroborate what you found in the qualitative part. Similarly, qualitative followed by quantitative. Quantitative is more important. Qualitative was just done to sort of maybe few interviews to start with, just to sort of get an understanding of what is happening. But quantitative is the major focus which you are going to write about in your study. And the opposite also can. So there are different uses to this kind of design, and there are four kinds of design that I just want to talk about. If anybody is interested, this is the book. You can get again, if it's a very good book on mixed methods research. This part of my presentation is from this book. There are four kinds of designs that you can think about in your research: triangulation, embedded designs, explanatory, and exploratory designs. I'll take you through what these designs are. So first, let's look at triangulation. Triangulation designs are designs where quantitative and qual strands are conducted separately yet concurrently and merged at the point of interpretation. Sorry for this structure, this formatting. Merged at the point of interpretation. Equal priority is given to each strand, and it is used to form a more complete understanding of a topic or to validate or corroborate results. So this is an example of triangulation design. If you want to show it conceptually in your papers, this is how you can do it. So you do quantitative study. On the other hand, you are also doing some interviews. You interpret both these results and then give a final interpretation based on what qualitative and quantitative results suggest. right? Where are they used? So this is how you can use it. You do quantitative data collection, analysis, results, qualitative data collection, analysis, results, compare and contrast the results that are coming from the two strands and give a final interpretation. There is another kind of design which is called as data transformation, where you said quantitative data collection, analysis, qualitative data collection, analysis, and then you can transform qualitative data also into quantitative data. So if you can get a maybe frequency chart out of your interviews, or you can get some numbers based on your qualitative data, and then you can merge the quantitative data, pure quantitative data that you got from surveys or other ways, and then the quantitative data that you have transformed or obtained by transforming qualitative data, and then you can use both of these quantitative data to uh, get to the final uh,
A
result.
quick
Sir,
question, please.
Yes.
So in the decision matrix, the triangulation design will be the first quadrant, right?
Yes, yes. This is where this both these will be aspects of triangulation. Pure triangulation will be here, where you are
Hmm.
doing it both together, right?
Right.
So it could be
Hmm.
dominant or equal. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
Either. Okay.
yeah.
Sir, Sonakshi just said, sir, when you say frequency, when you are saying that you can convert your qualitative data into quantitative data,
Yeah.
and when you talk about something frequency, so are we talking about like let's say how much a particular theme has been repeated in the interviews or something like that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You can say, for example, let's say you are doing um, personality. So personality is a dimension that you want to capture.
Sure.
So you can code the interview of individual people and say
Mhm.
how many times did that person talk about openness,
Okay.
right? And you
Okay.
get a score for openness for that individual, for those
Mhm.
individuals. And that becomes a quantitative number now that you can somehow analyze. And
Yes.
so you can plan it out that way.
So, in a way, we are inferring that let's say if one theme is being the frequency is high for one particular theme, that is maybe more important aspect that we need to
Yeah. So
maybe look into.
yeah. So your basically qualitative data, you have uh, transformed it to get some quantitative number out of it.
Oh, oh,
Right?
thank you.
So, Lekha here. I
Yes.
have a query in that quadrant that you had shown, where the first one is, which is triangulation, where qualitative and quantitative
Not,
both are equal,
not just this, both of these. So both
concurrent ones.
qualify with these. Both of these will qualify for triangulation.
Okay, okay. So, but suppose I'm looking at equal, the one with equal. Then, for a researcher, how does the sampling work? In the sense, if I have 250 samples in quantitative, but I have a stratified sample, so maybe 5 organizations and 50 responses each from say each organization. Then, how do I look at qualitative interview? Am I looking at interview from each sample, or is it that since my study requires I'm only looking at senior executives of these organizations, so I end up with say 10 or 15 interviews only? How do I balance out the sampling in this case or
Uh,
in any other case for that matter?
See, let me give you an example. Let's say you are doing a study of, uh, let's say, individual performance, individual level variables, right? So first, let's say you want to test the role of uh, motivation on performance of individuals, right? But you want to say you want to test the role of CEOs, okay? You want to test the role of organization culture and the organization CEO on this relationship of motivation to performance, correct?
Okay, okay,
So through survey, what you did was you collected data of individuals, okay, from the individuals, Now let's say you have 20 or 30 organizations that you want to look at. Now what you do is you interview people, do certain interviews in each of these 20-30 organizations, and through this qualitative data you actually get to a score of culture for these organizations. Okay, so you get 30 or 20 scores of culture for different organizations, and you can now use this score of culture for you can use this score of culture in uh, in your quantitative analysis that you have. So that is one way.
Okay, okay, sir.
The other way could be where you actually, through survey, you also obtain perceptions of culture from the respondents. Okay. But you also do some interviews to actually understand how does the culture actually look like. And you corroborate the number of the responses on culture that you obtained through the survey, and you corroborate your own findings of the culture based on qualitative interviews or focus group discussion from people.
So we have to balance it out along the number of companies that we have.
Yes.
Otherwise, it will not be considered.
Yes, because if you want to look at organization level, then you will have to get to a score for each of those organization. Only then you will be able to use that data in quantitative analysis.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So may I ask a question? I'm Kanika.
Yes. Yes.
So in qualitative research, let's say I'm doing interviews, but I've seen in a lot of papers, interviews are also supported by archival documents, archival data, etc. So if I want to, let's say, support my interview or enhance, I don't know, my interview analysis with analysis of such archival documents, etc. And these are also of a descriptive kind. They are not something that I can turn into quantitative data. How do I analyze and how do I integrate my analysis of this primary data with these documents?
So you will consider both of these as qualitative data. So
Exactly.
it will not be a mixed method design. It will be
Yeah. Right.
called as a qualitative data.
Right.
And you do the same kind of thematic analysis. You do the coding for interviews, and you also do the coding for the textual data that you have obtained from secondary sources. So the sources may differ, but the kind of coding that you follow for qualitative interviews, you'll do it the same way for quantitative data. The archival or the secondary sources data.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
The method of coding, the method of analysis will remain the same, just that the sources come from field interviews and also from archival secondary sources.
All right.
It will
All right.
continue to remain a pure qualitative study.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So one more question, sir. Sorry, Lekha here. If I have a qualitative as well as quantitative information about the area of my study, and I don't wish to do a mixed method. So for example, my thesis is essentially on quantitative methods. I can use the qualitative data that I have collected for conceptual papers, right? I can take this decision as a researcher to use the qualitative data only for my papers, to write conceptual papers, and use my quantitative for whatever my thesis.
So please understand, Lekha, I told in the beginning that qualitative data is also empirical data. So qualitative data does not need to always lead to conceptual or so qualitative data, you can also do thematic analysis and actually explain how the phenomena is working.
So my issue is that I have already, this is a specific, I'm in an individual situation. I've already submitted my research proposal in which I've mentioned that I'm going to use a quantitative method.
Okay, so let me answer.
Sorry.
You are free to use in your thesis only show quantitative data, but you can collect interviews and you can publish other papers on qualitative data. Absolutely, there's no stopping you from that.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You can for your university and for your professors, you can show quantitative papers, but if you understand qualitative and you can do a good job at it, you can definitely publish qualitative papers. No stopper.
So it's me, Gio.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
So in that quadrant, in the dominant quadrant, there is big con and small con. Is there any minimum number of, for example, minimum number of cases to be used for call and con?
Minimum number of
Cases to be used for qualitative, big qualitative study, and then followed by small quant, and minimum number of interviews to be followed in quant.
no, so in quantitative you are not doing interviews. Quantitative you are collecting data
Sorry.
using surveys,
Mm.
right? So there you, for that you will follow, for quantitative you will follow all the normal uh, sort of numbers that are stated, that you should have a sample size of about 200 and more, and all of that. Qualitative, you will follow the numbers that are specified, that if you are doing interviews, have at least about 15 to anywhere between 15 to 30 interviews of participants, if you want to show that you are doing a serious job at qualitative research, right? So that is how you, so you will apply the same kind of standards in both of them. If it is dominant, both of them are equally dominant, so you will use their own numbers to say that you are doing serious job at both of these. If one of them is dominant, so for example, if qualitative is dominant, you will do all your interviews, 15 to 30 interviews. Quantitative is less dominant, is not as dominant, so maybe you can say that I did maybe 50, I collected data from 50 to 100 people. Just as an additional, I get these numbers, but anyways, this was not my primary focus of work, right? My primary focus was qualitative thing. If it is quantitative, you follow your sample size requirement for quantitative data. Qualitative, you can say I did about 5 to 10 interviews, but anyways, they were just to give me an understanding of what was happening. I don't intend to seriously write about just those 5 to 10 interviews and so on. So I think that is where, that is how you take a call on uh, how you want to do it.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, Anu here.
Yes, yes.
Sir, could it be possible? Sir, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir, is it feasible, like if I derive factors from the qualitative research first, like maybe after doing interviews and FGDs, maybe I derive certain factors, and then in order to go about the details of that factors, I go for the quantitative survey then, I mean the survey and the questionnaire part.
We will come to other kinds of designs. This is just triangulation. There are other designs
Okay.
where you build on, you do first part, first study first, either qualitative or quantitative, and then build upon the results of the first study and do the second study. So that is the second. So then there are, let me just complete triangulation. You can have quantitative, which is dominant, and then qualitative. For example, you are quantitative, you are doing some survey, and in qualitative collection, you did some open-ended survey items, like we, towards the end of the survey, you just mentioned, if there's anything else you want to write, please write in the survey. And this is not a dominant paradigm. You are not interviewing people, right? You are just validating some of the quantitative results with the qualitative results. So in your paper, you will say that I gave some open-ended questions towards the end of the survey, and this is what people wrote, and which sort of helps me validate or triangulate the results that I have obtained from the quantitative data. Then you can have multi-level, where you do at level you do quantitative, then you within that quantitative you do qualitative study within. So basically what you are doing, you do surveys, then based on surveys you identify who are the people whom you want to interview, then you interview those people, and then you further identify people whom you want to again administer maybe a follow-up survey and so on. So again you triangulate, you embed one study into the other, and then come to achieve an overall interpretation of the result. Strengths. So every design has its strengths and challenges. It makes intuitive sense and is easy to understand. It is efficient. Data can be analyzed and collected separately using techniques associated with each type, but it takes effort and expertise is required. What to do if quantitative and qualitative results do not agree? Yes, that is a very important point. What if you you find out that the two streams actually tell you two different things? Challenging to converge, integrate two sets of very different data and their results in a meaningful way. And you need to carefully think about, if you want to transform qualitative data into quantitative data, how would you want to transform that data into quantitative data? So there is another, let me actually first go to the explanatory design, where you have the two-phase design, where you do quantitative first, and qualitative data explains or builds upon the initial quantitative results. It is useful when researchers have to explain significant results, outlier results, or surprising results. So for example, in your quantitative analysis, you found some counterintuitive results. So what do? You go back to the respondents and interview them about those counterintuitive results. You see, in our study, we found that motivation actually does not impact performance. Why do you think that could have happened? So you actually interview people for those specific findings, and then in your quantitative paper, you sort of, in your discussion section, you say, where you are going to talk about your findings, you say that we found this very counterintuitive, so we went back to the respondents, we interviewed few of them, and this is what some of them said, and so perhaps this is what is happening in this study and in this phenomena, and so on. So this is how you basically explain the results of the quantitative study. So follow-up explanations model, you do quantitative data analysis, you get to the results, then you identify results for follow-up. As I mentioned, you do call data collection, analysis, results, and then the final this thing. You can also have quantitative data as a primary part, but it is not the dominant. So you do quant data collection, quant data analysis, quant results, and then based on these results, you want to identify who are the participants whom you are going to interview for your actual qualitative research. So your dominant